Nairobi in Kenya and now spends his time between Kenya and London. But one of the things that is really interesting, important, and singular in his practice is the very material that he paints on. And it's something, I picked this painting to come close to first because it's one that reveals it so glaringly. Whereas painters across centuries have painted on wood panel, on canvas, on linen, one of the important early decisions Michael made in his practice was to want to have a material on which to paint that comes from where he comes from, that says something already in its substrate about the land that he knows, the traditions that he grew up with, the place where he was grounded. And so he paints neither on linen or canvas, but instead on labugo bark cloth. It's made from the bark of the fig tree. And it's a beautiful and time-intensive process. You have to imagine a fig tree, which by a Ugandan tradition, for thousands of years, they have removed the outer bark of the tree, made a small incision, and taken the inner bark of the tree, and then they very carefully wrap it in banana leaves. And so the tree grows its bark back again. It's a perfectly sustainable practice, and one that leads to the making, once they have soaked that bark, once they have hammered it with mallets, once they've stretched it, once they've dried it, once they've singed it. It's very time intensive. And then they end up not with yards of cloth by the yard like you would buy canvas or linen, but instead bits and pieces and bigger pieces that have holes and tears in them. And this very cloth has been used, according to Ugandan traditions, for thousands of years. It's kind of the world's first textile. And it was first used, it's in the name itself, labugo, which means burial cloth or burial shroud. So they would have buried their dead in this cloth. And when Michael first discovered it, and you see it, if you look on the sides of the painting, you'll notice the dark brown color. That's the original color of this cloth. When he discovered it, he had to reteach himself to paint because it doesn't absorb paint in the same way. Paint doesn't move in the same way. And so you have to imagine a young painter, inspired as he was, who knew his practice and yet started all over again to be able to paint on this cloth. It has, as you see, seams, because it comes in bits and pieces that need to be sewed together. For years, Michael was sewing this himself. There are finer, once you get close to them, there are finer cuts and patches, and these are sewn in Uganda with the blade of grass that holds them together. All of them, nearly all of them, have puckering, they have holes. They're almost like skin, a skin that is scarred, that has like a keloid scar on it. And for me, it's this kind of trembling of loss, of death, of love that sits at the very basis of every single one of his paintings. He is painting Africa, the East Africa that he knows, its myths, its histories, its stories, and memories. So this particular painting, he painted based on an oral memory. So not anything he saw, but something he heard. As a young child growing up near a farm, he heard the sounds of a mother cow being taken away from her babies so that she could enter milk production. She was forced into a machine, a kind of structure a bit like this one, and the sound of the cry of the babies and the mother so kind of traumatized Michael, so impacted his memory that he wanted to make a painting of it. But he wanted to render it something that we all might feel as viscerally as he did as a young boy. And so to do so, he made her human. He made the babies, little piglets that are suckling on this human mother. He made a kind of bevy of bystanders in the corner that are looking on, voyeurs, watching this kind of horrific scene. And if Michael is not afraid in his paintings to put his finger in a wound, to paint things that are terrible, traumatic, difficult. And this is one example of it.